have played in cultures and in religions all around the world. And I touched in that book on the role of psychedelics in the origins of Christianity, which, of course, is a dynamic subject. And what Brian has done in The Immortality Key has been to present hard and fast evidence that the first Christians were using psychedelics and that their religious experiences were mediated by psychedelic experiences.
And Brian, how did you get involved in this?
It's a long story.
You look like a stoner, by the way. I just tell you right now. You look like a guy who's done a few mushrooms in his day.
Oddly enough, I don't do drugs, and I've never done psychedelics.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
You want to start?
Today?
Well, I wish we were in L.A. I could hook you up. But in Texas, the laws are sketchier here. What led you to this then?
I was fascinated by Graham's work, which I only came across about 12 years ago. I was a Latin, Greek, and Sanskrit undergrad major. And instead of getting the PhD or becoming a priest, which are the two options when you study Latin and Greek, I went to law school instead for no reason whatsoever, and then wound up at a law firm, and a couple years into it started reading about these psilocybin studies coming out of Hopkins and NYU, and that amazing statistic that 2/3 of the participants were describing it as one of the most amazing experiences of their lives. And it hit me that there was something there, because the testimony coming out of Hopkins and NYU in a very clinical setting immediately reminded me of what I heard about Eleusis. And for those who don't know what Eleusis is, it's essentially the spiritual capital of the ancient world. It was where the best and brightest of Athens and Rome went to essentially meet a goddess in the flesh and have this mind-blowing visionary experience. So before Jerusalem, before Rome, before Mecca, there was Eleusis, and for some reason we're not taught about this in our high school mythology or Western Civ classes. But it was there that Plato, Cicero, Marcus Aurelius all went to drink a magical potion and, in their words, have this vision, what Plato calls a blessed sight and vision, the holiest of mysteries, in which they claim to have a direct encounter with the goddess and completely eradicate their fear of death. It's very similar to what the volunteers are saying with their similar experience of psilocybin.
Now, with Eleusis, how much history do you have? How much recorded history that documents these rituals, and is there any that describes the actual content of this mixture?
No, there isn't much. I mean, I say Eleusis is like the Fight Club of the ancient world. The first rule about Eleusis is you don't talk about Eleusis. You know, all we have is this fragmentary testimony, again, from Plato, Pindar, Sophocles, and others. They do talk about a vision that's almost universal, and they almost universally talk about this once-in-a-lifetime transformative event where they become initiates, and only they properly have life after death, because at the time, the Greeks didn't really look forward to the afterlife. In fact, there was no afterlife. You just disappear into Hades to do God knows what. But people walk away from Eleusis saying that they'd found salvation. And we don't know why or how. We know this potion is involved. We know they make this pilgrimage 13 miles from Athens to Eleusis to drink this potion. We know they prepare for months, if not years, before it, and they're forever changed afterwards. But we have very little hard data to actually look into it. And so in 1978, this trio of renegades, Gordon Wasson, Albert Hofmann, who discovered LSD, and Carl Ruck, who was then the chair of the classics department at Boston University, they put out this book, The Road to Eleusis, claiming they'd found the secret after 2,000 years. And what they claimed is that this potion was actually spiked with ergot, which is that naturally occurring fungus from which you can synthesize LSD. And in fact, it's how he synthesized LSD by accident in 1938 with cultures of ergot.
Well, we've talked about ergot before in this podcast, connecting it to the Salem witch trials, which is very speculative, but they think there's real evidence that shows that there was a late frost during the time of the Salem witch trials that probably led to mold growth on their wheat, which probably led to ergot infestation of their food. And so these poor people were, unintentionally eating acid.
Unintentionally.
Yeah.
It happened a lot.
Yeah.
There were ergot outbreaks across time, especially in the Middle Ages. They would call it St. Anthony's fire, the Ignis Sacer, because it's so common. In fact, if you talk to any brewer today, at least the brewers that I was talking to, I went to see this beer scientist in Munich, Germany, Martin Zarnkow, and he says you can't avoid it. Now, it's more common on things like rye, but it also pops up on barley and wheat too. And again, it's unavoidable and it's highly, highly toxic. The question is, does it really produce the kind of vision, the visionary experiences that people have on psilocybin, LSD, mescaline, and others? According to Albert Hoffman, absolutely. So as a matter of fact, I went into the Harvard archives where Watson's papers are kept to this day in the botany library, and I found a letter that Albert wrote Gordon, his co-author, in 1976, saying that Albert had self-experimented with ergonovine, which is one of these alkaloids in ergot, and he claimed in 1976 it was 5 to 10 times more potent than psilocybin.
Whoa. It's fascinating to me that these cultures seem to have hid some of these rituals. And this goes back to really as far back as we have recorded psychedelic use, like soma. We still to this day don't know what that is, and it's described in these incredible ways in ancient Hindu texts, but we